The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by living hands. Its ceiling reached so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath it. The walls were made of glass that showed the stars outside, and the floor was carved from stone taken from the oldest moon in the galaxy. Every species that had ever joined the council had placed a piece of their homeworld into that floor. Humanity's piece was a small square of gray granite, taken from a mountain in a country called Korea. It sat near the edge, almost hidden between the bright jewels and glowing metals of older civilizations. Taeho stood behind his desk and looked at that small square of stone. He had been Earth's ambassador to the council for 11 years. He was not a tall man. He was not loud. He wore a simple dark suit, while the other ambassadors wore robes made of light and fabric that moved on its own. He had learned long ago that in this hall, humans were always watched, but rarely heard. Today, the hall was full. All 47 species had sent their representatives. The air smelled of different atmospheres, mixing together. Some ambassadors breathed through masks. Others floated in liquid containers. The Valori delegation glowed softly blue from their seats high above. The Drothi sat low and heavy, their stone-like bodies barely moving. High Speaker Draven stood at the center platform. He was tall, even for his kind. His skin was pale silver, and his 4 eyes moved independently, watching different parts of the room at the same time. He had led the council for 30 years, and in that time, he had never lost a vote. "We now bring forward Resolution 7714, Draven said. His voice filled the room without effort. The matter of humanity's permanent seat on the council. Taeho straightened his back. He had prepared for this day for months. Earth had applied for a permanent seat 6 years ago. They had followed every rule. They had filled every form. They had waited and waited and waited some more. The committee has reviewed humanity's application, Draven continued. He did not look at Taeho. After careful study, the committee finds that humanity does not meet the requirements for permanent membership. A soft sound moved through the hall. Not surprise, something closer to agreement. Taeho felt his hands go still at his sides. He had expected this. He had told his team back on Earth that this might happen. But hearing the words out loud, in this enormous room, in front of every species in the known galaxy, still felt like a hand pressing down on his chest. Humanity has been part of the Council's General Assembly for only 92 years, Draven said. This is a very short time. The youngest permanent member, the Valori, served for over 600 years before receiving their seat. Humanity has contributed to trade and to some peacekeeping missions, but their contributions remain limited in scale. Taeho listened. He did not move. Furthermore, Draven added, humanity's home system contains only one inhabited planet. Their population, while growing, is small compared to Council standards. Their technology, while creative, does not meet the threshold for independent classification. Draven paused. For the first time, he looked at Taeho. His 4 eyes settled on the human ambassador, and something in them looked almost sorry. Almost. The committee classifies humanity as a minor species within the General Assembly. This classification will be reviewed in 300 standard years. 300 years. Taeho did the math without thinking. Every human alive today would be dead before that review came. Their children would be dead. Their grandchildren would be dead. The council was telling humanity to wait, and by the time the wait was over, no one who heard these words would still be breathing. The hall was quiet. Some ambassadors looked at Taeho. Most did not. Sora, Taeho's deputy, sat behind him. She was younger, sharper, and far angrier than he was. He could feel her tension without turning around. He knew she wanted him to speak, to argue, to stand up and tell the council that humanity had done more in 92 years and some species had done in 1,000. And she would have been right. Human engineers had built the communication relays that connected the outer colonies. Human doctors had stopped the Rathani plague from spreading to 12 worlds. Human negotiators had brokered peace between the Velori and the Drathi, not once, but twice. Humans ran the supply lines, maintained the stations, trained the emergency crews, and translated between species that could not understand each other. But the Council measured worth in centuries, not actions, and by that measure humanity was young, too young, a child species knocking on the door of a very old house. Teho looked at Dravan. He looked at the other ambassadors. Then he looked at that small square of granite in the floor. He picked up his folder. It was a real paper folder, because Teho had always believed that some things should be held in your hands. Inside it were the speeches he had prepared, the arguments, the data, the charts that showed everything humanity had done for the galaxy. He closed the folder. "Thank you, High Speaker," Teho said. His voice was calm and clear. "We understand the Council's decision." That was all. No argument, no anger, no grand speech about injustice or fairness. Just 5 words and a small bow of his head. The hall went very quiet. Not the quiet of agreement this time, the quiet of confusion. Species that had been voted down before had screamed. They had threatened. The Moravi had once set fire to their own desk in protest. The Velori had walked out and come back the next day with a fleet visible through the glass walls. But Teho just closed his folder and turned to his team. "Pack everything," he said to Sora. His voice was low now, meant only for her. "Tell Earth we are coming home." Sora stared at him. "All of us?" "All of us. Teho, we can fight this. We have support from the border colonies. The Rathani owe us for the plague. We can—" "No," Teho said. He said it gently, the way a father might say it to a child who wanted to stay at a party where they were not welcome. "They made their decision. We will respect it." Sora's eyes were bright with tears she would not let fall. Not here. Not in front of them. She nodded once and began gathering their things. Teho walked to the exit. The doors of the Great Hall were enormous, built for species much larger than humans. He had always felt small walking through them. Today, for some reason, he did not. Behind him, High Speaker Draven watched the human delegation leave. He noticed that they walked in a straight line. They did not look back. They did not whisper to each other. They moved like people who had already made peace with something the rest of the room did not yet understand. Counselor Navin, a wide-bodied Drothi with deep orange eyes, leaned toward Draven. "That was quiet," he said. "Yes," Draven replied. "I expected more from them." "So did I." Draven looked at the empty human desk. The paper folder still sat on its surface. Teho had left it behind. Draven sent an aide to collect it. When the aide brought it back and opened it, Draven found page after page of carefully prepared arguments, data, and evidence. It was, without question, the most thorough and well-built case any species had ever prepared for a permanent seat review. Teho had never even opened it. Draven closed the folder and placed it on his own desk. He did not know why, but the weight of it bothered him. It was just paper, but it felt like something more, like a hand reaching out that he had slapped away. Outside the Great Hall, Teho stood at the observation window. The stars stretched out in every direction. Somewhere out there, past the trade routes and the relay stations and the colonies, was a small blue planet, orbiting a very ordinary star. Home. Sora came to stand beside him. "What do we tell Earth?" she asked. Teho watched the stars for a long time. Then he spoke. "Tell them we are not angry. Tell them we understand. And tell them to turn on the lights at home. We are coming back." Sora wanted to ask what that meant, but something in his voice told her that the answer would become clear soon enough. They walked away from the window together, 2 small figures in a hallway built for giants. Their footsteps echoed for a moment. And then the hallway was empty, and the echo was gone, and the silence they left behind was the loudest thing the Council had ever heard. The order reached every human in Council space within 12 hours. It was not sent by emergency signal. It was not broadcast on open channels for everyone to hear. It came through private messages, personal devices, and quiet calls in the middle of the night. The message was simple: come home. No explanation was needed. Every human already knew. On Station Mirak 6, a trading post that sat at the crossroads of 3 major shipping lanes, a woman named Yuna was cleaning her medical tools when her device lit up. She read the message twice, set the device down, and looked around her clinic. She had built this place with her own hands. When she arrived 7 years ago, the station had no medical facility for carbon-based species. The Valori had their light healing chambers. The Drothi had their stone setters. But the dozens of other species that passed through the station every day, species that bled and bruised and broke bones, had nothing. Yuna had taken an empty storage room, begged for supplies, and turned it into a clinic that served over 200 patients a week. Now she was being asked to leave it. She did not argue. She did not send a message back asking if there was another way. She simply began packing. Her assistant, a young Rathani named Polly, watched her with wide, dark eyes. The Rathani were small creatures, barely reaching Yuna's waist. They had soft gray fur and hands with 6 fingers, perfect for delicate work. Polly had come to Yuna 3 years ago, too shy to speak, too scared to touch patients. Yuna had trained her with patience and kindness until Polly became the best surgical assistant on the station. "You are leaving," Polly said. It was not a question. "Yes," Yuna said. She folded a cloth and placed it in her bag. "When?" "Tomorrow morning." Polly stood very still. Her small body trembled, but she did not cry. Her species did not cry with tears. They went quiet, and their fur turned a darker shade of gray. Polly's fur was nearly black now. "Who will run the clinic?" Polly asked. Yuna stopped packing. She knelt down so she was at eye level with Polly. "You will." "I cannot. I am not trained enough. I do not know enough." "You know more than you think," Yuna said. She placed her hand on Polly's shoulder. "I have written everything down. Every procedure, every medicine, every treatment. It is all in the files. You can do this." "But what if I make a mistake?" Yuna smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was real. "Then you learn from it. That is what I did." She finished packing that night. She left the clinic keys with Polly, along with 3 notebooks filled with handwritten instructions. On the last page of the last notebook, she had written a single line: "You are always better than you believed." She did not look back. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out 1,000 times. On the agricultural world of Fenu, a man named Minho shut down the irrigation systems he had designed. The Fenari people watched him from their fields. Their crops had tripled since the humans came. Before Minho, they lost half their harvest to dry seasons. He had studied their soil, their weather, and their water sources, and he had built a system that worked with their planet instead of against it. Now he was dismantling the control panels and loading them onto a shuttle. The village elder, a tall Fenari with bark-like skin and deep green eyes, stood beside him. "Why are you taking the machines?" the elder asked. "I am not," Minho said. "I am just removing the parts that need human maintenance. The rest will run on its own." "For how long?" Minho paused. He wiped sweat from his forehead. 3 years. After that, someone will need to replace the filters. Can you teach us how?" "I already taught Keno. He knows what to do." The elder looked at the fields. The crops moved gently in the warm wind. "Will you come back?" Minho picked up his bag. "I do not think so." He walked to his shuttle without another word. The elder watched him go and felt something strange. a feeling his species did not have a word for. Later, when the crops began to struggle, and the filters broke sooner than expected, he would find the word. It was loss. On the border colonies, the withdrawal was harder. Humans had lived there for decades. They had married into other species. They had built homes, started businesses, raised children between stars. The order to come home meant leaving behind lives that could not be packed into bags. A man named Do-hyun ran a repair shop on Colony Vega 9. Engines, life support systems, communication arrays, even the old drothy stone ships that nobody else understood. His shop was always full. His waiting list was 3 months long. Species came from other systems just to have Do-hyun look at their ships. His wife, Rena, was Valori. She glowed softly blue like all her kind, and she had hands that could reshape light into solid objects. Together they had a daughter who was half human and half Valori, a girl with dark hair and skin that shimmered faintly in the dark. When the message came, Do-hyun sat at his kitchen table for a long time. "You do not have to go," Rena said. She sat across from him, her light flickering with worry. "I do," he said. "Why? This is your home. We are your family." "You are my family," he said. "But Earth is calling its people back. All of them. If I stay as something else. Not as a human representative. Not as part of the community Earth built here. Just as a man who chose himself over his people." "Is that so wrong?" Do-hyun looked at his daughter. She was sleeping in the next room. Her breath made a small sound. Half human sigh, half Valori hum. "Come with me," he said. Rena's glow dimmed. "To Earth? I have never been to Earth. I would not survive the atmosphere without support. We have the technology. We can make it work." "And our daughter?" "She comes with us. She is human too." Rena reached across the table and took his hands. Her light wrapped around his fingers like warm water. "Then we go together." Not everyone was so lucky. Some humans left behind partners who could not follow. Some left behind children who chose to stay. The withdrawal was not clean, it was not painless, but it was complete. Within 30 days, there was not a single human left in Council space. The effect was not immediate. At first, the Council barely noticed. Humans were only one species among 47. They were small. They were young. The galaxy had existed for billions of years before them, and would exist for billions of years after. But then the small things started breaking. The communication relays on the outer rim began to fail, not all at once, one by one, like lights going out in a long hallway. The relays had been built by human engineers, maintained by human technicians, and updated by human programmers. Without them, messages that once took seconds now took hours, then days. The supply line slowed. Human logistics officers had managed the flow of goods between hundreds of worlds. They had memorized the schedules, anticipated the shortages, and solved the problems before they became crises. Without them, shipments went to wrong planets. Medical supplies sat in warehouses, while clinics ran empty. Food rotted in cargo holds, while colonies went hungry. The translation networks became unreliable. Humans had a strange gift for languages. They could learn any tongue, mimic any sound, and understand meanings that machines missed. The automatic translators worked well enough for simple conversations, but for treaties, negotiations, and delicate diplomacy, everyone had relied on human translators. Now misunderstandings began to grow between species that had been at peace for centuries. On Mirak 6, Polly opened Yuna's clinic and tried to treat patients alone. She followed the notebooks carefully. She did her best. But when a Moravi trader came in with internal bleeding, she froze. The procedure was in the notebook, but her hands shook too much. The trader survived, barely. Polly sat on the clinic floor afterward, and her fur turned so dark it was almost invisible. She picked up her device and tried to call Yuna. The message failed. The relay was down. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, High Speaker Draven received reports every day. Minor issues. Nothing serious. That is what everyone told him. Nothing serious. But Draven was old, and he had learned that small problems were like cracks in glass. You could ignore them for a while, but they always spread. He looked at the empty human desk in the great hall. No one had removed it yet. No one had touched the paper folder that still sat on its surface. It was as if the council was waiting for someone to come back and open it. No one came. The desk sat empty, and the cracks spread, and the galaxy turned a little slower, without the small, quiet species that had once sat near the edge and asked for nothing more than a seat at the table. It started with a shipping dispute. A Valori cargo vessel arrived at a Drothi port, carrying 300 tons of thermal crystals. The Drothi inspector said the cargo was short by 40 tons. The Valori captain said the full shipment was on board. They argued for 2 days, and neither side would give in. Before, a human logistics officer would have checked the records, found the error, and solved it in an hour. The mistake was almost always simple. Different species measured weight differently. The Valori used light-based scales. The Drothi used gravitational ones. A human would have known this and adjusted the numbers without anyone losing face. But there were no humans left at the port. The dispute turned into a formal complaint. The complaint turned into a trade freeze. The Drothi stopped accepting Valori shipments until the matter was resolved. The Valori responded by raising tariffs on Drothi stone exports. Within a week, 2 of the largest economies in Council space were pulling away from each other, and the reason was 40 tons of crystals that had been on the ship all along, just measured wrong. Councillor Naven brought the matter to the council floor. He was Drothi, wide and heavy, with a voice like rocks grinding together. He had served on the council for over a century and had seen many disputes, but this one bothered him in a way he could not explain. "It is a simple measurement error," he said to High Speaker Draven. "Why can we not fix it?" Draven looked at the reports on his desk. "We have sent 3 arbitration teams. None of them could communicate with both sides clearly enough to find the problem." "What about the translation networks?" "They are working, but they miss the small things. The tone, the meaning behind the words. The Valori say one thing and mean another, and our translators take everything at face value." Navin's orange eyes narrowed. "The humans used to handle this." Draven said nothing. "I am stating a fact," Navin said. "The humans handled trade arbitration between the Valori and the Drothi for 40 years. They understood both sides. They knew how to find the truth without making either side feel wrong. And now they are gone." "They chose to leave," Draven said. "Did they?" Navin leaned forward, and the floor cracked slightly under his weight. "Or did we choose for them?" Draven did not answer that question either. The trade dispute grew. Other species took sides. The Moravi backed the Drothi because they depended on stone imports for their construction projects. The Rathani sided with the Valori because the Valori had protected their homeworld during the last border conflict. Lines were drawn that had not existed for centuries, and then the real trouble began. On the border world of Karan, a Valori patrol ship fired a warning shot at a Drothi mining vessel. The Drothi vessel had entered Valori space, but only because the navigation beacons were offline. The beacons had been maintained by human engineers. Without maintenance, their signals had drifted, and the borders they marked had become blurry. The warning shot missed the mining vessel but hit an asteroid, sending debris into a nearby shipping lane. A Rathani transport was damaged. 3 crew members were injured. The Rathani government demanded answers. The Valori blamed the Drothi for entering their space. The Drothi blamed the faulty beacons. The Rathani blamed everyone. Within a month, 3 species that had been at peace for over 200 years were moving warships toward each other's borders. Navin watched the situation reports come in every morning. Each day the numbers got worse. More ships, more soldiers, more anger. He had lived through one war in his long life, and he remembered what it felt like when the galaxy started to shake before the ground broke open. He went to Dravan's office. The high speaker was standing at his window, looking out at the stars. He looked tired. His silver skin had lost some of its shine, and his 4 eyes moved slowly, as if they were too heavy to turn. "We need to talk about the humans," Navin said. Dravan closed his eyes. "Not this again." "Yes, this again, and again and again until you listen." Navin sat down, and the chair groaned under him. "I have pulled the records. Do you want to know what the humans did for this council?" "I know what they did." "No, you know what the reports said they did. The reports only show the big things, the treaties, the missions, the projects. They do not show the small things, the everyday things." Navin placed a data tablet on Dravan's desk. Humans served on 14 arbitration boards. They managed logistics for 237 trade routes. They trained emergency response teams on 91 worlds. They ran medical clinics on stations that no other species wanted to visit. They translated for species that could not understand each other. They fixed machines that nobody else knew how to fix. He paused. And they did all of this without a permanent seat, without real power, without a voice in the decisions that affected their own future. They did it because they were asked, and because they were good at it, and because no one else would. Dravan opened his eyes. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to say that we made a mistake. The vote was fair. The vote was legal. That is not the same as fair." Navin's voice was quiet now, which was unusual for a Drathi. When they spoke softly, it meant they were being serious in a way that went beyond anger. "We measured them by time, by how long they had been here. But time is not the only measure of worth." Dravan turned from the window. "If I admit we were wrong, every minor species in the assembly will demand the same review. It will destroy the system." "The system is already breaking," Navin said. 3 species are about to go to war because we cannot solve a measurement error that a single human could have fixed in one afternoon. Dravan sat down. He picked up the data tablet and scrolled through it slowly. Page after page of records. Names he did not recognize. Stations he had never visited. Small acts of service that had never made it into any official report. He stopped at one entry. A human engineer named Engi had spent 4 years on a Rathani colony, rebuilding their water purification system after a natural disaster. She had lived in a tent, eaten local food that made her sick, and worked 16-hour days until every family in the colony had clean water. When she was done, she had moved to the next colony and done it again. There was no record of anyone thanking her. Dravan set the tablet down. "Even if I wanted to reach out to them, we do not know if they would listen. We will not know until we try. And if they say no?" Navin stood up. "Then we will deserve it." He left the office, and Dravan sat alone with the tablet and the silence, and the growing feeling that the galaxy was coming apart at the seams. The next day, the Valori ambassador requested an emergency session. The Drathi had moved a fleet to the Karen border. The Rathani had recalled their diplomats from 3 council stations. The Moravi were threatening to leave the council entirely if the trade freeze was not lifted. Dravan stood at the center platform and looked out at the hall. It was full again, like the day of the vote, but the mood was different. That day there had been calm confidence. Today there was fear. "We must find a solution," the Valori ambassador said. Her light flickered rapidly, a sign of stress. "The situation at Karan is getting worse every hour." "Then pull your ships back," the Drathi representative growled. "Your miners entered our space." "Because your beacons are broken." "The beacons are not our responsibility." "Then whose responsibility are they?" Silence. Everyone in the hall knew the answer. The beacons had been humanity's responsibility. Humans had built them, calibrated them, and kept them running for decades. It had been one of those small invisible jobs that nobody thought about until it stopped being done. Draven raised his hand for quiet. I will send a council engineering team to repair the beacons, Draven said. When? The Drathi representative asked. Within 2 weeks. It took 6 weeks. The council engineers were skilled, but they were not familiar with the human-designed systems. The beacon technology used a method that no other species had developed, a way of combining signals from multiple sources to create a single, clear boundary line. The human engineers had called it layered triangulation. It was elegant, simple, and completely foreign to anyone who was not human. By the time the beacons were repaired, the damage was done. The Drathi and the Vellery had exchanged fire twice. Nothing major. No one had died. But the trust that had held them together for 2 centuries was cracking, and everyone could hear it. In his office, Draven opened the paper folder that Tejo had left behind. He had read it before, but now he read it again, slowly, carefully. Every argument was precise. Every piece of evidence was real. Every claim was supported by data. On the last page, Tejo had written a summary. It was 3 sentences long. Humanity does not ask for power. We ask for a place. A place is not given by time, but by what you do with the time you are given. Draven read those 3 sentences 7 times. Then he closed the folder, put his head in his hands, and sat in the dark of his office, while the galaxy burned slowly around him. The Council sent its first envoy to Earth 62 days after the vote. They chose a Vellery diplomat named Tessara, because the Vellery were considered the most graceful speakers in the galaxy. She arrived in a silver ship that landed gently outside the city of Busan, where the Earth government had built its new diplomatic center after the withdrawal. The building was not impressive by galactic standards. It was made of glass and steel and wood, built into the side of a hill that overlooked the sea. There were trees around it, and birds sang in the morning. Inside, the hallways were simple. Clean floors, white walls, windows that let in natural sunlight. No floating platforms, no light sculptures, no gravity wells. Just a building made by human hands for human purposes. Tessara waited in a room with a wooden table and 2 chairs. A window showed the ocean outside. Waves moved slowly against the shore. On her world, water did not collect in large bodies. It floated in the air, as mist and light. She waited for an hour, then 2. She did not mind waiting. Vellery were patient by nature. But she noticed that no one checked on her. No one offered refreshments. No one apologized for the delay. The room was comfortable, but empty. And the emptiness felt intentional. At the start of the 3rd hour, the door opened, and a woman walked in. Jisoo was 43 years old. She had short black hair, sharp eyes, and a face that showed nothing she did not want it to show. She wore a dark blue jacket over a white shirt. No jewelry, no decoration. She carried a single cup of tea in one hand and a glass of water in the other. She placed the water in front of Tessara. I was not sure what you could drink, she said. If water does not work, I can find something else. Water is fine, Tessara said. Thank you. Jisoo sat down across from her. She did not frown. She sipped her tea and waited. Tessara understood that she was expected to speak first. This was unusual. In council diplomacy, the host always opened the conversation. But Jisoo simply sat there, calm and quiet, as if she had all the time in the world. I have come on behalf of the Galactic Council, Tessara began. High Speaker Draven sends his regards. Jisoo nodded once. The Council is aware that the recent reclassification of humanity has caused some disruption. The withdrawal of human personnel from Council space has created difficulties in several areas. We would like to discuss the possibility of a renewed relationship. Jisoo set her tea down. What kind of relationship? A return to the previous arrangement. Human workers Engineers, doctors, and diplomats would resume their positions across Council space. In exchange, the Council is prepared to offer certain benefits. Increased trade access, technology sharing, educational partnerships. But not a seat, Jisoo said. Tessara hesitated. The matter of the permanent seat is complex. The Council's rules are clear. A species must meet certain requirements before— I understand the rules, Jisoo said. Her voice was soft but firm. I helped write some of them. Before I became Foreign Secretary, I served on 3 Council committees. I drafted trade agreements and helped settle border disputes. I know the rules very well. Tessara was quiet for a moment. She had not known this about Jisoo. The Council's records of individual humans were not detailed. Humans came and went so quickly by galactic standards that keeping track of them all seemed unnecessary. Then you understand our position, Tessara said. I understand your position. I am not sure you understand ours. The ocean stretched out below them, gray and blue and endless. When Taeho came home, he did not say a word for 3 days, Jisoo said. He sat in his apartment and looked out the window and said nothing. On the 4th day, he came to my office and handed me his resignation. I asked him why. He said that he had spent 11 years trying to show the galaxy that humans mattered, and in the end, they told him he was minor. She turned back to Tessara. Do you know what that word means to a human? Minor. It means small. It means unimportant. It means not enough. It is a classification, Tessara said carefully. It does not reflect the Council's personal feelings about— Yes, it does, Jisoo said. You can hide behind rules and classifications, but words have weight. When you tell a species that they are minor, you are telling every individual of that species that they are less. Every doctor who saved lives, every engineer who kept your stations running, every translator who stopped your wars from getting worse. You told all of them that they were not enough. Tessara's light dimmed. Among the Valori, this was a sign of shame. What would you have us do? Tessara asked. Jisoo sat back down. She picked up her tea again and held it between her hands. The warmth seemed to steady her. Nothing, she said. Nothing? You told us we were minor. We believed you. We came home. We are building our own trade routes now, our own communication networks, our own alliances with species that were never part of the Council. Tessara leaned forward. The border colonies, the Rithani, the Fenari, and others, Jisoo said. Small species, young species, the ones the Council calls minor. It turns out there are quite a lot of us. Tessara felt a coldness that had nothing to do with temperature. The Valori could sense shifts in power the way some species could sense changes in weather. And she felt a shift now. It was subtle, like a current changing direction far below the surface of an ocean. But it was real. You are building a separate alliance, Tessara said. We are building a community, Jisoo corrected. There is a difference. An alliance is about power. A community is about belonging. The Council never let us belong, so we found somewhere else. This will divide the galaxy. The galaxy was already divided. You just did not notice, because you were on the bigger side. Tessara sat back. She had come to Earth expecting to negotiate a return. She had prepared offers, compromises, and incentives. She had expected the humans to be grateful, or at least willing to listen. Instead, she found a woman drinking tea by an ocean, telling her calmly and without anger that the galaxy had changed while the Council was not looking. I will bring your words to the High Speaker, Tessara said, and please tell him something else. What? Tell him that Taeho is teaching now. He teaches young humans about the galaxy, about the species they will never meet and the places they will never visit. He teaches them about the Valori and the Drati and the Rithani and all the others. He teaches them with kindness and wonder, because even after everything, He still believes the galaxy is beautiful. Jisoo paused. He is not angry. None of us are. And that is what should frighten you the most. Because angry people come back. They fight. They demand. They make noise. But people who are not angry, people who have simply accepted that they are not wanted, they move on. And once they move on, they do not come back. Tessara stood. Her light was very dim now. Is there nothing the council can offer? Jisoo walked her to the door. The hallway outside was bright with sunlight. Through the windows, Tessara could see humans walking on paths between the trees. Children were playing on a field of green grass. Someone was laughing. You can offer what you should have offered from the beginning, Jisoo said. Respect. Not as a bargain, not as a trade. Just respect, because it is right. And if we do, then maybe we can talk again, but not today. Tessara walked back to her ship. The sea wind touched her face, and she realized it was the first time she had felt wind that was not generated by a machine. It smelled of salt and earth and something she could not name, something alive. She left Earth and flew back to Council Space in silence. She did not write her report for 3 days. When she finally sat down to write it, she found that her hands were shaking. Not from cold, not from fear. From the weight of something she did not have a word for in her language. In the end, she wrote only 1 page. It said, "They are not coming back. They are not angry. They have simply decided that they do not need us. And I believe they are right." Draven read the report alone in his office. He read it once, then again, then a 3rd time. Then he set it down beside Taeho's folder, and looked at the empty chair across from his desk, where Navin usually sat. He thought about Jisoo and her tea, and her quiet voice, and the ocean behind her. He thought about Taeho teaching children about the stars. He thought about every human who had ever walked through the Great Hall, small and quiet, and never asking for more than they were given. He had led the council for 30 years. He had never lost a vote. He had never made a decision he could not defend. But sitting alone in his office, with a 1-page report and an unopened folder, he felt something he had not felt in decades. Doubt. It settled into his chest like a stone in still water, and it did not move, and he could not make it move. And for the first time in his long life, Draven understood that some mistakes cannot be fixed by winning another vote. 1 year had passed since the vote. Draven stood in the Great Hall at midnight, when no one else was there. The lights were low. The stars outside the glass walls moved slowly, the way they always did, patient and endless, and completely unaware of the small creatures who fought over the space between them. He walked to the human desk. It was still there. No one had removed it. In the beginning, it was because they expected someone to come back. Now it stayed because removing it felt like admitting something that nobody was ready to say out loud. The paper folder was gone. Draven had taken it to his office months ago. But the desk itself remained, with its simple wooden surface and its single lamp. It was the only wooden desk in the Great Hall. Every other species had chosen metal, crystal, light, or stone. The humans had brought wood. Taeho had once said it was because wood was alive once, and sitting at it reminded him of home. Draven touched the surface. Smooth and warm, even in the cold hall. He thought that was strange. Then he realized it was not the desk that was warm. It was his hand. He was feeling his own warmth reflected back to him, and for a moment it had felt like someone else was there. He sat down in the human chair. It was too small for him. His long legs did not fit under the desk, and his arms hung awkwardly at his sides. But he sat there anyway, in the dark, looking out at the stars from the place where the humans used to sit. From this angle, the view was different. The center of the hall, where the high speaker stood, looked far away. The podium seemed high and cold. The seats of the permanent members towered above, arranged in a half-circle that looked from down here like a wall. Draven had never noticed that before. From his podium, the hall looked open and grand. From the human desk, it looked like a fortress that you could see into but never enter. He sat there for a long time. The galaxy had changed in 1 year. Not broken, not destroyed, but changed in ways that could not be undone. The trade routes that humans had managed now ran through different channels that connected the minor species to each other instead of to the Council. The Rathani had signed a trade agreement with Earth. The Fenari had joined something the humans called the Open Table, a network of species that shared resources without requiring centuries of membership or formal classification. The Open Table had no great hall, it had no podium, it had no permanent seats. Decisions were made by whoever was affected by them, and everyone had an equal voice, regardless of how old they were or how many planets they controlled. It was messy and slow, and sometimes confusing, and it was growing faster than anything the Council had built in 10,000 years. Navin had warned Draven about this. He had stood in this very hall 3 months ago and addressed the full Council. "We are losing the edges," Navin had said. "The border species, the young ones, the small ones. They are leaving us, not with anger, but with indifference. And indifference is harder to fight than war." The Council had listened politely and done nothing. Some members said the Open Table was temporary, a reaction. It would fall apart on its own because young species did not have the experience or the resources to maintain a galactic network. But it did not fall apart. It grew, and with every species that joined the Open Table, the Council shrank, not in size, but in relevance. The Great Hall was still full, but the decisions made there mattered less and less to the galaxy outside. Draven had sent 3 more envoys to Earth after Tessara. Each time, Jisoo met them in the same room with the wooden table and the view of the ocean. Each time, she listened politely, offered water, and said the same thing in different ways. "We are not angry. We do not need you. Come back when you are ready to treat us as equals." The 3rd envoy had asked Jisoo what she meant by equals. She had smiled, the first time any envoy had seen her smile, and said, "You will know when you are ready. If you have to ask, you are not ready yet." Draven had not sent a 4th envoy. Now he sat at the human desk and thought about all the things he had not done. He had not visited the border colonies when the humans were still there. He had not walked through Yuna's clinic, or watched Minho's irrigation systems work, or seen Do-hyun fix a ship with tools that fit in one hand. He had not read Taeho's folder when it mattered. He had not asked the one question that might have changed everything. "What do you need from us?" 4 words, simple words, words that any leader should know how to say. But Draven had never said them, because in the Council, the powerful did not ask. They decided, they classified, they voted. Asking was for the small ones, the minor ones. He understood now. Too late, but he understood. A sound made him look up. Navin was standing at the entrance to the hall, his heavy body blocking the doorway. He looked at Draven sitting in the human chair and said nothing for a long moment. "You look uncomfortable," Navin said finally. "I am," Draven replied. "The chair is too small." "That is not what I meant." His joints ached from sitting in the wrong position. He looked at Navin across the dark hall. "I spoke with the Fenari elder today," Navin said. "The one from the agricultural colony where the human worked. Minho." Navin blinked. "You remember his name?" "I remember all their names now," Draven said quietly. "I read every file, every record, every report that was ever filed about a human working in Council space. It took me 4 months." Navin walked closer. His heavy footsteps echoed in the empty hall. "What did you learn?" Draven looked at the desk. "That they never asked for credit. any of them. They just did the work and went home. Some of them worked for decades on stations where no one knew their names. They kept things running, and when something broke, they fixed it, and when someone needed help, they helped. And they never once came to this hall and said, "Look what we did for you." He paused. We measured them by the wrong things. We counted their years and their numbers and their technology, but we never counted what mattered. What mattered? They cared. That is what mattered. They cared about the work. They cared about the people they helped. They cared about the galaxy in a way that was not about power or status or recognition. They just cared. Navin was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "The Fenari elder told me something. He said that when Minho left, the crops still grew for a while. The machines still worked. Everything looked the same. But then the first filter broke, and nobody knew how to fix it the way Minho did. And then the second filter broke, and the third. And one day the elder walked out to his fields, and the crops were dying, and he thought, this is what it feels like when someone who cared about you goes away." The two of them stood in the dark hall. The stars moved outside. The empty desks and platforms stretched out around them like a city with no people. "Can we fix this?" Navin asked. Draven walked to the window. He looked out at the stars and tried to find Earth's sun. He could not. It was too small, too far away, hidden among billions of other lights. "I do not know," he said. "Jisoo said we would know when we were ready. I do not think we are ready yet." "Then what do we do?" Draven turned from the window. He looked at the human desk one more time. Then he walked to the center of the hall, to the podium where he had stood 1,000 times, and he looked at the great hall from the place where all decisions were made. It was a beautiful room, the most beautiful room in the galaxy, but it was empty, and the emptiness meant something now that it had not meant before. "We learn," Draven said. "We learn what they tried to teach us. We learn that a seat at a table is not something you earn by being old or powerful or large. It is something you earn by sitting down and listening to the people next to you, even if they are small, even if they are new, even if they have only been here for a moment." He stepped down from the podium. His footsteps were the only sound in the hall. "And we hope," he said, "that when we finally learn that lesson, it is not too late to say it out loud." Navin followed him toward the exit. At the door, Draven stopped and looked back one more time. The human desk sat in its corner, small and wooden and warm. The lamp was off, the chair was empty. But it was still there. Nobody had removed it. And as long as it was there, the door was still open, even if the people who once sat at that desk were very, very far away. Draven turned off the lights and walked into the corridor. Behind him, the great hall went dark, and the only light came from the stars outside the glass walls, millions of them, burning quietly in the black, the way they always had, the way they always would, long after every species in the galaxy had learned, too late or just in time, that the smallest lights are sometimes the ones you miss the most.